Well, housing is not about housing in a vacuum. For the NAACP, we see the totality of segregation and discrimination in all facets. We also understand that it takes place in all 50 states. So we need a federal policy landscape to affirmatively enforce fair housing in a way in which all citizens are experiencing equal protection under the law, and we remove people from under the specter of social immobility. One's zip code should not determine their life's future. And without an affirmative fair housing policy, we doom this country to failure because we will not realize the talent of all of our citizens. So housing is a critical part of the civil rights advocacy work. If you look at civil rights in this country, it was based on exploiting people for free and cheap labor. That was supported by controlling one's vote and reducing access to quality education. But connected to both of those things, it was the creation of segregated housing patterns to ensure that the tax dollars that flow for education was quarantined to certain communities based on housing patterns and not allowed in other communities. In addition to that, opportunity was based on housing patterns. If you look at job opportunities, African Americans left from the South, they went north to major cities because that's where jobs were located, only to find that some of the same segregated housing patterns that existed in the South were being reinforced in the North. And so our goal as an organization is to reduce residential segregation wherever it exists. That's why it's necessary to have a federal policy landscape, because without that, we will find ourselves in scenarios where unintended policies create segregated practices, which will result in reduced social advancement for African American children. Well, housing discrimination is definitely one of the unfinished business of civil rights, but so is education. And the two things go hand in hand. If you look at our tax policy in this country, it's based on local property tax, which funds public schools. So if we don't address fair housing legislation on a federal level, we will never be able to truly address the educational opportunities for all children. Racial inequities show up in all facets of life, and you cannot address inequities if you're not dealing with housing. Housing is the basis of one's wealth. It is the number one wealth creator in this country. And if you segregate housing in a way in which it is devalued over time, and it will lock people into a cycle of poverty that we should not allow any human being in this country to be locked into. Well, with this current political climate, many of the advancements that we've seen over the last 40 years are on the table. No one would have conceived of a Supreme Court case to completely undermine the Voting Rights Act. And when that signal was sent, we must be ever vigilant as it relates to housing policy, particularly with this current administration, as we should be with all of the advancements we've seen over the last 40 or 50 years. Well, political will is built primarily through coalitions. No one organization can hold the magic wand to a solution. All of us bring value and voice to the table, and through our coalition, we got to make sure front and center are public policies that meet the needs and the interests of communities that we represent. And the communities we represent, their interests are dispersed among all the organizations that are a part of this coalition.